And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was still concealing his identity. Nobody knew he was Krishna. But the atheists, as well as the very proud so-called religionists, they could not tolerate that they were not allowed in the house of Srivas for the kirtans. And they couldn't tolerate that Srivas was becoming so loved by so many people for his devotion. So they were spreading the most nasty rumors against Srivas. He was practically constantly the object of all kinds of lies and false propaganda. They were saying that he was raping young girls in the middle of the night, intoxicating them with strong liquor, and then abusing them, and that's what they're doing, crying the names of God all night. It's blasphemy of God that they're doing it in such a state. And at one point, the king, the Malecha king, was coming with soldiers on boats toward Navadvip. And these antagonistic people were crying out that the king is coming with soldiers because the chanting of the holy names of the Hindu gods is outlawed. And they're going to come to punish us all because of Srivas. Srivas is a coward. He's going to run away. And the soldiers are going to take us, they're going to beat us, they're going to plunder everything we have because of him. So what I say is we should tie him up and we should beat him and we should give him to the king. And then we should knock down his house and throw it in the Ganges and plunder everything he has. This is the way they were talking. And devotees would hear this because it was spreading all over town. They would just think, Krishna will protect us. And Srivas was very compassionate. He understood Krishna will protect. But he was thinking, why should, if the king is coming with his soldiers, they could, beat and persecute and kill the devotees. So he was very much worried about that. One day, Lord Caitanya was walking along the river Ganges. And he happened to hear these people saying all these crazy things. They were even blaspheming him because of his association with Srivas. And he just walked by. And then on the bank of the river, he saw some cows, beautiful cows, with their calves. Some of them were laying down. Others were eating grass. Others were dancing with their running, jumping with their tails raised. And when he saw the cows, his identity of Krishna awakened in his heart, and he cried out, I am he, I am he. And he ran to the house of Srivas. Srivas was in his puja room worshipping Narasimhadev to protect all the devotees. And Lord Caitanya knocked on the door very strong, and he said, Srivas, he who you are worshipping has come. Open the door. And then the Lord knocked the door open. And Srivas looked at him, and Lord Caitanya manifested his four-arm form. He was sitting in the Virasan, holding the conch shell, the chakra, the club, and the lotus flower. Beautiful bluish complexion. He was showing the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord of Vaikuntha. And Srivas fell to the ground crying. He was in the ecstasy of shock. And the Lord said, Srivas, offer me prayers. And Srivas offered beautiful prayers. He was reciting and giving his own realization purports to the prayers that Lord Brahma offered to Krishna. Because Brahma tried to test Krishna But Brahma didn't recognize that Krishna is the Supreme Lord of his life. And then later, when Brahma understood who Krishna's real identity, he offered these prayers. And in a similar way, Srivas is offering Brahma's prayers. I didn't recognize you. I was practically living with you, and now I know who you are. And Lord Caitanya said, Srivas, why are you afraid? The king is coming with his soldier on boats, but what can he do to you? I am the Supreme Lord. Unless I give him the order and the sanction to come here, how can he come? But due to my giving everyone their independence, if he does come, I'll get right on the boat and I'll preach to him and I'll show him my transcendental form. And then what will he do? But if he still decides to do it, then I'll say to the king, bring the elephants, the dogs, the horses, the birds of your kingdom, and then bring your qazis. These qazis who have, due to their influence, you have outlawed the Sankirtan of the holy name. And you get them to chant. You get them to chant their prayers and make these animals weep in ecstasy. And they will not be able to do it. And then I will grab the elephants and the horses and the dogs by their tails, and I will bring them here. And I will chant the holy names of Krishna, and I will tell them, chant! And all the elephants and the dogs and the camels and everybody and all the birds, they will weep in ecstasy, roll in the ground, crying the holy names of Krishna. Srivas, if you want to see how I can do this, watch what I do. The Lord then saw in the corner of the room a 4-year-old little girl named Narayani, who was Srivas's niece. Just a very simple little girl. Lord Caitanya said to Narayani, Narayani, chant Krishna's name in ecstatic love and cry. And that little girl started going, Krishna, Krishna. Tears like rivers were pouring from her eyes. Her hairs were standing on end. Her limbs were trembling. She fell to the ground. She was rolling on the ground, uncontrollably crying out, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. And devotees, Srivas, he was very happy. And Srivas said to Lord Caitanya, he said, my Lord, I'm not afraid of the king or anyone else. In fact, when you appear in this world as time personified to destroy the entire material creation, I will be fearless and happy chanting your holy name. Then the Lord said to Srivas, bring your relatives, your maidservants, your friends, everybody, bring them here. And Srivas brought. And Lord Caitanya was manifesting his beautiful form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in front of everyone. And Malini, the wife of Srivas, who was such a pure-hearted, loving devotee, her and her husband, they offered incense, they offered sweets, they offered arti. They anointed his feet with sandalwood and tulsi leaves and flowers. And Lord Caitanya put his lotus feet on the heads of all of the maidservants, friends, and relatives of Srivas, and they all attained the ultimate perfection of seeing God face to face. He gave them all ecstatic love. And in this story, Vrindavan Das Thakur says, when one becomes dear to a great devotee, one gets the highest benedictions of the Lord. Simply because of their association with Srivas, they all attain perfection. This is the power of a devotee's love. One day, Lord Nityananda Prabhu appeared for the first time in Navadvip. And Lord Caitanya sent Srivas and Haridas Thakur. He said, I had a dream. I had a dream where a chariot came in front of my house, and on that chariot there was a very, very large man with a blue turban and blue robes. He had a plow and over his shoulder, and he carried a club, and he had one beautiful earring on his ear. And he looked intoxicated with ecstatic love of God. He had a flag on top of his chariot with a palm tree. And he was rocking back and forth again and again saying, is this the house of Nimai? Is this the house of Nimai? And I came out and I asked, who are you? And he said, I am your brother. Tomorrow we will get to know each other. He said, I believe this was Balaram himself, who has come somewhere in Navadvip. Go and find him. So Srivas and Haridas, they searched for 9 hours through the houses, the bathing ghats, the shops, the markets, and they came back and said, we don't see anyone like this. And Lord Chaitanya smiled that Nityananda is very mysterious. He said, come with me. And they went right to the house of Nandanacharya, where Gaur Nitai had their first meeting. Lord Chaitanya told Srivas, you should take care of Nityananda Prabhu and bring him to your house. And he did. And the next day, Lord Chaitanya told Srivas that we should perform the Vyas Puja celebration. And you should take care of all the formalities. So Srivas did that. And it was in his house that Lord Chaitanya manifested his Sat Puja, his 6-arm form, for the first time to Lord Nityananda Prabhu in the presence of Srivas Thakur. And soon after that, Lord Chaitanya established for 1 year all-night kirtan every night in Srivas Angam, in the courtyard of Srivas's home. And so many things happened within our historical biographies of Lord Chaitanya in the house of Devaki and Vasudev, but he performed his most intimate pastimes in the house of Nanda and Yashoda. In the same way, Lord Chaitanya was born in the house of Jagannath Mishra and Sachi Devi, but he performed his most intimate pastimes in the house of Malini and Srivas. It's the Rasastali. It's non-different. The kirtans in the house of Srivas were non-different than Ras Leela. And we know the story of how people wanted to get in that house so bad, but Lord Chaitanya, because he was manifesting such high ecstasies, common people would not be able to understand or appreciate. So only the most pure-hearted, intimate associates were allowed in those all-night kirtans. And some people who were not allowed in, they were so proud, because Srivas was the one who had to say no, that they tried to destroy him. One was Gopal Chapala, who in the middle of the night put a black tantric puja paraphernalia in front of Srivas's house with wine and meat and blood and all kinds of other things, so that when people would get up in the morning, they would think that this is what Srivas does at night. And Srivas was the first person up, and he saw it. And he called people and said, this is actually what I do at night. But nobody believed him. So they cleaned it all and washed it with cow dung. And Gopal Chapala ultimately got leprosy because of his offense. But Srivas was praying for him. And eventually when he came to his senses and sincerely came to Srivas, Srivas forgave him, embraced him, and Gopal Chapala not only was cured of his leprosy, but he became one of the most intimate devotees in the inner circle of Lord Chaitanya's associates. Another time that there was a brahmachari who was coming to Srivas every day and saying, Srivas, just one time I want to see Lord Chaitanya dance, let me in. Now Srivas already had other experiences. One time there was a kirtan and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing ecstatically, and then he stopped the kirtan and said, I'm not feeling love for God. Is someone here that's not supposed to be here? Srivas searched and found, hiding in the corner of a room behind some things, was his mother-in-law. Now, Srivas is a supremely cultured, respectable gentleman. So how do you deal with your mother-in-law? Well, he removed her from the house in a very special way. And then after she was gone, Lord Chaitanya was dancing in ecstasy. So when this brahmachari came and said, let me in, please let me in, Srivas said, I can't let you in. Lord Chaitanya selects who could come in, and you're not one of them. He said, please, just one time. Now this brahmachari was very austere. He never ate anything except milk, sometimes some fruits and roots. But he was well known because he only drank milk. So Srivas said, you're pious, you're celibate, you only drink milk, and again, every day you're begging, I have to let you in, but I'm going to have to hide you. So this brahmachari was so happy. So Srivas, earlier in the day, he hid the brahmachari in a place where no one would ever find him. When Lord Chaitanya began his kirtan, all the devotees were chanting the holy name. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was dancing in ecstasy. Suddenly he stopped. Said, I am not feeling the ecstasy of Krishna. Is someone in this house that is not supposed to be here? And everyone was really afraid. And Srivas came forward. He said, there are no atheists in the house. There are no sense enjoyers in the house. But there is a brahmachari. But he's very pious and he's very, very humble, and he doesn't even eat food, he just drinks milk. And Lord Chaitanya appeared to get very angry. And he said, out, get him out of here. I will not have any milk drinker in this house. What right does he have to see my dancing? Where in the scripture does it say that performance of austerity is a qualification for seeing the Lord or for true bhakti? Only one who takes shelter of the Lord. Even if a person who is the keeper of a cremation pit, even a person of the lowest standard of life takes shelter of me, that person can see me. But even the most powerful, learned sannyasi who lives a life of severe austerity, unless they humbly take shelter, They cannot see me. What austerities did Gajendra do? He was an elephant. What austerities did Hanuman do? He was a monkey. What austerity does the gopis do? They were cowherd girls. But because they took shelter of the Lord with love, they attained the perfection of love of God, and they saw the Lord face to face. Then the Lord raised both of his arms and pointed his fingers and said, "Get that milk drinker out of here before I destroy the creation." At that point, the brahmachari stood up. It was like out of nowhere. Everybody was looking around. Who is this person? Then he just, from where he was hiding, he stood up. And he was walking out the door. He was really quite affected. He walked out the door, and as he was walking, all the devotees gazing upon him, he was thinking that Lord Chaitanya is so merciful, he's so kind. Everything he was saying about me is true. I don't deserve to be here. I have no real devotion. He chastised me because of his love, because of his compassion. And I'm so grateful to have been severely chastised by the Lord. But still, I got to see his dancing for a few seconds. Because his heart was so grateful and positive about being humiliated and chastised in front of everyone, the Lord was pleased with him. Because the Lord is within our heart, and he sees our thoughts. So Lord Chaitanya, pleased that he was grateful to receive chastisement, he told the devotees, "Bring this brahmachari back." And the brahmachari came back, and Lord Chaitanya placed his lotus feet on the brahmachari's head and gave him ecstatic prema. And then he said, "Please do not think that through your mundane austerities you can achieve Krishna. It's only by taking shelter with a sincere and humble heart." This was another great soul who attained perfection because of his relationship with Srivas. There was also, by social category, a person who wasn't even in a caste. But Srivas liked him. And Srivas allowed him to wash the clothes for his family. And one time this person was walking down the street, and Nimai happened to see him. And Nimai was thinking that this is the person who washes the clothes for Srivas, my devotee. And he revealed his divinity before this person, this washerman. And the washerman started weeping and leaping in ecstasy, crying out, "I have seen, I have seen, I have seen." In the house of Srivas, Lord Chaitanya performed his Satpraharya leela, or Maha-prakash. For 21 continual hours, he was revealing his opulences as the Supreme Lord Krishna. Generally, Lord Chaitanya always assumed the role of a devotee. And if anyone identified him as God, he would hold his ears and say, "Never say that. The living entity can never become God. We are all eternal servants of God. The goal of life is to love God, not to be God." But for his most confidential associates, for those 21 hours, he continuously manifested various incarnations according to his devotees' desires. And it was at the beginning of that Maha-prakash leela that they were performing a bathing ceremony for Lord Chaitanya, the Abhishek. And one maidservant of somebody who just worked in the house of Srivas named Duki, she was very, very humbly just bringing water from the Ganges in pots and lining them up very nicely so that the devotees would just have the water right there to bathe the Lord. She was way in the back. Nobody even noticed she was doing it. And the name Duki means miserable one. Sometimes if parents, all their children died either of miscarriages at birth, and finally one child lives, they name her Duki, or Dukkha, it's a boy, which means the miserable one. And the idea is destiny will feel sorry for a person with such a horrible name and leave them alone. It's bad enough that they're named Duki. Let's not cause her any more suffering. So her name is Duki, the miserable one. And she's just humbly, arranging the pots and going and carrying water from the Ganges back to Srivas's house. And Lord Chaitanya, although Nityananda, Advaita, Haridas, Gadadhar, and all these Buddhimanta, Murari Gupta, Shuklambar, Brahmachari, all these greats, the greatest of saints and avatars are all in the house. Lord Chaitanya was just looking at Duki, this little servant. And he asked Srivas, who is this? And Srivas said, her name is Duki. And Lord Chaitanya smiled and said, the name Duki does not sit nicely in my heart. Not for her. Today, I give her the name Sukhi, which means the happy one. And just by giving her that name, she became happy. Not just happy. She attained the highest perfection of yoga. Krishna Prem. And she became, and at that point, Srivas didn't consider her a maidservant. He considered her a worshipable saint who had been bestowed ecstatic love of God by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Again and again, through Srivas, Lord Chaitanya taught that one who loves the Lord, anyone who that person loves gets special blessings of the Lord. Anyone who appreciates a great soul becomes very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I have a meeting now, so I must end the class. And I'm going to Hyderabad today. So I'll be giving class from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I'll escape. So we'll continue this narration perhaps at that time. Thank you very much.